everybody, and welcome to TechTalk. Today we're going to be talking about a music format that's synonymous with music itself. We are going to be talking about the cassette tape. And we're going to be talking about how it is not as bad as you remember. We're going to be talking about in this video Dolby noise reduction, the different kinds of tape and how they give you an advantage to recording, and the comparison between different kinds of tapes on different recorders. Let's begin. So the first thing that you should know about cassettes are the different kinds. Here I have the three main kinds of cassette. Type 1, which is ferric, Type 2, which is chrome, and Type 4, which is metal. Now, you probably see here that there's no Type 3. Type 3 was an experiment to combine the ferric tape and the chrome tape to make a really well-rounded tape. It didn't last long because the metal tape was better in every single department that the Type 3 was good at. So I'm not going to include any Type 3s because I don't own any and it's redundant. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of each one. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the Type 1. Now, Type 1 cassettes are really, really common. You can get like 20 packs of these for only like 15 bucks on eBay, which is really, really nice. Like any other cassette, they're double-sided. They come in different time standards. Mine is 90 minute, 45 minutes on each side. So 90 minutes is pretty much the best you can get without having a tape that's extremely brittle. And it's very good for fitting two normal size LPs on here. The cons of this is that it's not very good in the treble department and it makes a lot of hiss. Now, chrome is the one that you should always go for. This is the tape that is not as common as a ferric tape, but not as expensive as metal. This has the best sound overall, but it just a little bit lacks in the bass department. Like all tapes, of course, it has A and B sides. This one is also in 90 minutes, which I said is the best time. The cons with this are they're slightly more expensive than the ferric tape, and like I said before, it's not the best bass response. Another pro to getting Type 2 tapes is that they are also very common to find. And in fact, they're still making Type 1 and Type 2 tapes. Now, let's talk about metal. This is the gold standard for a cassette tape. It is the best you can get. This is a Sony model here, Metal XR. Nothing really too special. Of course, it's 90 minutes and has two sides. Another thing that's a pro about this is that it has extremely good treble and bass. It will be the best sounding tape you will ever hear, and some argue that it sounds just as good as a CD. The only con of having metal tapes is that they're extremely expensive to find, either new or used. Pretty much the best tape you can buy nowadays on the cheap are 90-minute Type 2 tapes. I actually found a 2-pack of these for $10 on eBay. It's probably one of the best finds on eBay that I've ever had, but they are extremely rare to find. Now, let's talk about how you identify them. Let's start with the Type 1. Usually on the case or the cassette itself, it says something like Type 1 or normal bias, something like that. But the key way to know is to look at the top here. You can see these Right Protect notches here and that they're covered with this plastic tab. If there's only two, one on each side, you know it's a Type 1 tape. Unless you are dealing with special variety pre-recorded cassettes. Now, all pre-recorded cassettes have the Type 1 shell because it's the easiest and the cheapest to find. If we look at the bottom here and wind the tape on, besides the header, this colored header does not make any difference to the tape at all. You can see here that the tape is sort of brown. Well, now let's take a look at this Type 1 tape. This one as well is brown. That is the other way to distinguish type 1 tapes. Now, some tapes, such as this one, are the chrome variety. And another way you can tell usually says chrome in the corner, but this one says HQ, or high quality. So let's take this one and wind it on. You can see there it's slightly darker than a type 1 tape, so let's just take this one. Yeah, you see that? Okay, so now let's compare it to this type 2, which is nicely wound on. This type 2 tape is slightly darker because it's slightly more high-end and maybe has a bit too much chromium on it. But that's one other way to distinguish pre-recorded type 2 tapes. So let's just put it there. Now, if you're looking at the standard type 2 tapes to distinguish one, you look again on the top, and if there's a hole next to the right protect notches, or it's like too wide, or if this one's taken out and it's more like a rectangle than a square, that's type 2. Now there are pretty much no pre-recorded cassettes that are metal. So you just wanted to look at this. Usually it says metal on it, or type 4, you know. Same thing with this one and this one. It says usually their type on it, or like 2 something, or 1 something. Now, the way to distinguish this between a type 1 and type 2 tape is, look here. You see, that's kind of like a chrome tape, but in the center there you have those 2 holes. That means it's a metal tape. So now, let's take all the knowledge we've just learned and recap it. Type 1s are the worst sounding, but they're the easiest to find. Chrome tapes are middle sounding, and they're also very easy to find, and will pretty much give you the best response for the best sound for the money. Type 4 tapes, on the other hand, are going to be the best sound on a tape you will ever hear, but they are extremely expensive and very rare. So basically, the best you can get is a 90-minute type 2 tape. Let's now talk about Dolby noise reduction. Now let's take a look here at that one pre-recorded cassette we were looking at before. You see down there, it's like the Dolby symbol, but you know, this is Dolby before they were making home theater stuff. It says HX Pro and BNR. Now, we don't have to worry about the HX Pro, but let's worry about the BNR. The NR stands for noise reduction, which means that this tape will sound better than most because it has been recorded and duplicated in a way that will relieve it of most hiss. Now, there are 4 different kinds of Dolby noise reduction, but only 3 you really need to care about. The first you had was Dolby A. That was only used in professional recording studios in the 60s and the 70s, so it never was recorded onto cassettes. The next was Dolby B, which is what you see on most pre-recorded cassettes. See there, and that says there. Although you probably have to look on the case itself to talk about it. If it just says Dolby or Dolby System, that pretty much means guaranteed it will have Dolby B. Now there is also Dolby C. This was never on any pre-recorded cassettes of any kind, but it's pretty much the best noise reduction you can get on most players. I always record my tapes on Dolby C, but you may encounter problems playing it back on devices that don't support it. And finally, you have Dolby S. Dolby S was the last noise reduction made for cassette tapes. Now, this seems like a bit of a strange choice to show you, but this actually is Dolby S noise reduction. Take a look down there. HX Pro and S noise reduction. Now, Dolby S is, of course, the best. And the thing is that most cassette decks do not have Dolby S. They're only on the really high-end stuff from the late 90s. This is the only tape I've ever encountered to have Dolby S on it. So, if you find one, pick it up. It might be pretty special, and it will sound very good on any cassette deck. So that's very, very cool. So now let's take our knowledge that we just learned and put it all together and wrap it up nicely. So, Dolby B noise reduction is what you get on most pre-recorded cassettes. It is the bog standard, you see this everywhere and it sounds very good. But it's not as good as Dolby C. Now keep in mind this is just a placeholder. You cannot only just record Dolby S onto metal tapes, you can record it onto every single type. This was pretty much the best you can get on most cassette players that are easy to find today. including some Walkmans. This is very good sounding, and some would say it sounds almost as good as a CD. And finally, we have Dolby S. It is the best sounding noise reduction out of all three, but the only con is that it is extremely hard to find a player that supports Dolby S playback and recording. So you will get these or you record them, and most players will not be able to play them. Let's now do a comparison of noise and hiss on these various different kinds of tapes with different noise reductions to show you how it all works. Let's start with a Type 1 cassette with Dolby B, then C, and then no noise reduction, as my cassette deck does not support Dolby S. Let's begin. So, for our last segment of today, I will be recording 2 segments on this tape. It will be my theme for the channel, which is the macOS 10 Leopard welcome screen. So I'm going to be recording it onto this Type 1 tape at B set with no noise reduction, and I'm going to be recording a snippet on my main deck and this old Radio Shack. So I got this one for free in my main deck, which is a nice high-end Sony, what's the model number? Oh yes, TCR302. I got it for $50 and it functions perfectly. It may not be in the best of shape, but it works like a charm. So let's start recording. So what's the moral of this story? Well, if you're interested in cassette tapes, don't just get that random, garbage cassette recorder that you find on the side of the street. Go on eBay, take some time, and find a cassette recorder that fits your needs. As long as it has Dolby noise reduction, you will be fine. And using Ferric with Dolby B, it sounds great if you have a machine like mine, and I only got mine for $50, and it works beautifully. So if you put a little bit of money and a little bit of time into finding and purchasing the best cassette tape player for you, you will have a great experience of analog tape that sounds almost as good as a CD. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.